Good day, everyone, and welcome to World Blender Meetup Day 2022. My name is Daniel Orji, and I want to say a big thank you to Kevin and the rest of the team for setting this up for the year 2022 and being invited again. Thank you very much. All right, in this tutorial, I'm going to be going over my workflow for creating armor patterns using the tissue add-on in Blender. Alright, just before we begin, some backstory. I'm a character artist, and the character I'm working on has these scale armor patterns to it. So stuff like this, that you have you have rows of scales, coming beneath each other. So you have this, for example, you have this row, and then the other ones come beneath, the other ones come beneath, so on and so forth until the end of the armor piece. So it's stuff like this that I'm trying to recreate on the character, and I'm going to show my workflow for doing that using the tissue add-on, because I just discovered it some few weeks back, and I've been playing with it. So I thought, let me share my knowledge with the Blender community, and I hope that this could be helpful to everyone watching. Alright, so if you haven't enabled the tissue add-on, you can just head to edit, the header menu, and then you go to preferences. Just do a search tissue. All right, mine's already enabled, so if you haven't enabled it, you can just do that quickly. And then once you're done, okay, before you do that, hit A and select everything. And then X, delete. Then we hit N and go to the edit tab, and then you see it here, tissue tools. This is where the settings for the tissue add-on are. All right, we'll get back to that. So now we need two things. We need the mesh that is going to act as like a guide for the patterns to be placed on top. So think of it think of the mesh as like an armor piece, for example. So I'm going to use a cylinder, and let's say this is something like let's imagine the cylinder to be something like a bracelet. Actually, let me use a circle. Still the same thing anyway. And I'm going to come over here, this little menu, and I'm going to use 10 vertices. Then I hit tab, go to edit mode, E, extrude it down. I lock it on the Z axis by pressing Z, and I left click and release it. Then I'll hit Ctrl R, and I think use my mouse wheel, scroll up. I think I'll add 4 loop cuts. Confirm that. Alright. Just before we move on, I'm going to change my matte cap to something I prefer. Okay. Then I'll add the multi-res modifier. Sorry, the subdivision modifier. The subsurf. And I'll apply that. Alright, if I hit tab, I think I'm fine with the amount of faces. We actually don't need much. It depends on what you want anyway, but for this example I do not need much. Okay. I'll hit tab to go out of edit mode, and hit Ctrl A, apply the scale. And then the next thing we're going to do, I'll explain when we begin tessellating the pattern around. We hit tab again, and just double left click, select this edge loop, or anywhere really, it doesn't really matter. And then we hit Ctrl E, and then we mark the seam, select everything, U, and unwrap. Let's see the unwrap. Let's see what it's done. Okay. Because for this illustration, I actually need the mesh to be UV unwrapped. As I said, I'll explain in a bit. Okay, I'll go back to the layout tab. Then the next thing we're going to do will be to add the mesh the sort of the source of the pattern, the pattern that will be the mesh that is going to be repeated around the cylinder or the circle cylinder actually. So hit shift and right click to bring the cursor this other way, and this could be anything you want, any sort of pattern that you want yeah. So shift A, add the plane, and I'm going to align it to the view. Hit G and Z to bring it down. Just want it to be right, yeah, here. Then hit tab, go to edit mode, and alt A to deselect everything. Hold B, press B, and buff for box select. I'm going to scale it on the X axis. Scale it on the X axis. Control R to add a loop cut in between, and I'm going to select this vertex and pull it down. So G and Z, just pull it down a bit. I think here is fine, and then deselect that, alt A, Control R again, and I'll put this somewhere here, like in the middle, almost in the middle, I guess. And then I'm going to bevel that, Control B, and I'll use the scroll wheel, add another loop cut there, and I'll OK that. So basically I'm just trying to create sort of like the pattern that is going to be it's not a pattern yet anyway, but it's something that the mesh that will be tessellated around the cylinder. Okay, so I'm going to use Control R, just bring this up, Control R again, and Control R again. Select everything with A and extrude it. It automatically extrudes on the local Z axis, and then select everything. It's a good practice to check and confirm if your normals are alright. Alright, so you can see that red shows that the normals are flipped, so we'll shift N to change that and correct that. Now I'm going to select this vertex and hit Control and select this one, and it picks the shortest path and just select everything in between. And then I'm going to hold Shift to select this one and hold Control to do the same thing, and then come here again, Shift, and then hold Control. Yeah, I'm gonna do this. Hit Alt S and scale it out. Okay, I actually want the back to be flat, so I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so this is the stuff, this is the mesh that's going to be tessellated round. I'm going to hit Z and shade smooth. This is not what we want. I'm going to come to the object data properties and to normals, tick auto smooth. Yeah, that should handle everything. Then the next thing, I'm going to do what I did again. I will select this vertex, left click, and then Control and click on this one, just picks the shortest path, and I'm going to push this out a bit. Just rotate that on the X axis. Okay, and then I'll go to face select and double click. It's going to select the loop, the face loop, and then hit G and Y. Just move it back a bit. Let's move it back a bit. Okay, I think I'm fine with this for now. I will adjust it later if I need to. Okay, and just to be sure our edges are really sharp, all the time, I'm going to double click around this, double click to select the edge loop, and Control E, and we're going to mark those edges as sharp edges. Or if you have hard ups, you could just do Q and mark them. Anyone is fine. Okay. Now we're going to begin playing with the tissue add-on so that we can get the armor patterns. Alright, so we're going to dive in and begin playing with the tissue add-on itself. Before that, I'll select these edges. Just want to pull them down. G and Z. Okay. And I'll double click this and Control E. Mark sharp. I'm going to increase the bevel width to 1 in case I need to use it for some beveling later. Select these as well. Control E, mark sharp, and increase the bevel width to 1. I think I'll do it for this as well. We may not see it, but all the same. Just Control E, mark sharp, and the mean bevel width, take it all the way up to 1. Okay. Alright, now we head to the already at the edit tab, and then that's where you see the settings for the tissue tools, and we're going to select the mesh that will be tessellated first and then the base mesh last. So select this one first and then hold shift, select this one, and we hit tessellate. Now the fill mode, you go to use patch, and then for the rotation we're going to use the active UV. So it's going to use the rotation of the UV coordinates, which is why we unwrapped it earlier, so that you can control how the pattern flows around the base mesh. And then for the component coordinates, we're going to use local, and for the X and Y we'll use cyclic and cyclic. Then for the proportional, for the thickness, we'll use the proportional setting. The constant just seems to give constant thickness all through, but proportional makes it a little bit more dependent on the base mesh, so to say. I think that's how I'll put it. Yeah, and we'll leave the scale at 1 for now. We'll adjust that next time, and then we're going to click on merge and of course smooth shading, and we'll go to the advanced settings. Now the only thing I touch here on selected faces. Now let's say you have a complex mesh, just not just a cylinder, and you want perhaps you want a different pattern for a different part of the mesh. So that is where the unselected faces will come in. So you select a group of faces, maybe you have some vertex groups, you select the faces, and then the pattern is just going to work on those faces. Yeah, just like as I said, vertex groups, weight painting, all those kind of stuff, you restrict it to a certain group of selected faces. Okay, but for this one I'm just going to do it around the whole mesh, so I don't need to select it, and then hit OK. Okay, so this is the first result that's given us. If I scale this up, you can see that some of the mesh is hidden inside. So if I scale it out, then we can now see the other mesh, the other parts of the mesh. But this is not what we want. The rotation is not what we want, and then the scale and all that, we have to fix that. So you can see it creates a new mesh and calls it tessellation, so we can just delete that and we'll change some things. Okay, so we're going to select the base mesh and we'll go to the UV editing, select everything, and we're just going to hit R and 90, hit 90, and Control P to pack that in. That should fix the rotation to be how we want it. The next thing we're going to change will be the position of the mesh. So moments ago the the tessellated mesh was sort of clipping into the base mesh, and that's not what we want. We want it to sit nicely on top, or a little bit above the base mesh or the base. So we'll go to tab, edit mode, and hit G and move it on the select everything, hit G and move it on the y-axis just a bit, because as we move it on the y, the offset between the tessellation and the base sort of increases. So if we move it this way, it sort of goes inwards, and then we move it out on the y, it comes out more. Then I'm going to change the transform pivot point to the 3D cursor, so it scales from up here, and I'm going to scale this in edit mode, scale this down a bit, and then tab out and select this one, select the base, and hit tessellate, and we'll reduce. Okay, this was at 1 before. I'm going to reduce it to 0.1. The thickness, the proportional thickness, reduce it to 0.1, and then we hit OK. Okay, we can begin to see some okay, I think it's a bit too flat. Yeah, so we'll delete that, and going to do it. I think I'll just go back and these loop cuts, or these are edge loops. I didn't just hit Ctrl E and mark sharp and increase the bevel weight so that everything is sharpened up. Okay, so we're going to head back and select the mesh that we want to use for the tessellation, then select the base, go back to the edit tab and hit tessellate, and let's try 0.3, hit OK. Okay, it's giving us some more thickness. Alright, so I'm going to play around with the size of the mesh, the rotation of the mesh, so that we can get the kind of patterns that we are looking for. So I'm going to, firstly, okay, let me change this to random color so you can differentiate the tessellated mesh and the base. I'm going to scale this a bit, hit enter, and then we select the mesh. It's already selected, and then we hit the base and we tessellate. Okay, now I'm going to delete that, so deleted it already. Get back to edit mode, tab into go to edit mode, and S and X, scale it on the X axis a bit to shrink it, and then tab out, and then we select the base again, tessellate. Okay, we're getting somewhere. All right, now to get the mesh to sort of point out, I'll delete this. I'm going to bring the 3D cursor, put it over here, and it's already the pivot point is already set to the 3D cursor, and I'll go to wireframe, hit Z and C for circle select, and I'm going to hold shift and deselect these parts, and I'll press O and turn on proportional edit and just rotate this, or rather before I do that, I'm going to go to tab, edit mode, select everything and hit R and rotate on the X axis, like let's give it 30 degrees, negative 30 degrees, or let's see, yeah, 30, let's use 30, negative 30 degrees, and we'll try it out again, so the scales can be pushed out a bit, and we'll now hit tessellate. Okay, I think 30 was too much, so now the scales are sort of pushing out, which is close to what we want, but not exactly there. So as I said, you just keep playing. I'm going to delete this and I'm going to reduce that, let's say by 10, negative again. So then we hit tessellate, go back and try it again. Okay, all right, I think I like this for now. All right, so here goes. I'm going to rotate it again, just slightly this time. I think I'm going to include this vertex too. Okay, then let's try again. Okay, so the scale sort of pushes out, and then I'm going to increase it again. I'm going to increase the size. So I'll hold shift and right click so we can snap the cursor to that point. Sorry, excuse me. And then I'm going to scale this just a bit. I think that's fine. Then select the base and we hit tessellate again. Okay, one more time. Okay, just a bit, and then we select tessellate and okay. So you can do various things with this add-on. This is just what I found, and it's very close to what I did on the character. So as I said, imagine that this is like part of like let's say a gauntlet you're doing without the gloves, of course, just on the wrist, for example, and then you need some kind of pattern around the armor piece that you're working on. If I were in your shoes, I probably use the tissue add-on, yeah. And then after this, you could unwrap this, or perhaps you do it on a flat, just on a plane, and sort of bake it, and you know you could do whatever you want with it, yeah. So, and if I hide this, if the density of the scales depends on the density of the mesh. So if I increase, if I add another subdivision surface modifier, all right, and I apply it, and I do this again, okay, all right, so you can see that the scales have also increased in number as well. So it depends on the density, depends on what you want, and how your mesh is laid out. So I can hide the base now, and I'm going to change the I'm going to tick the cavity so we can see the mesh quite clearly. So this is it, and as I said, you could do, I imagine you could use this for some kind of designs around armor pieces, or some kind of I think feathers as well. Maybe if you're doing some kind of feathery armor, stuff like that. So it depends on how you model the shape, and then you have the meshes that you're going to use, sort of like the wings. Let's say you're doing feathers, for example, and then you have the wings that will now be tessellated round the mesh that you have laid out. Yeah. So that's basically a bit about the tissue add-on. It's simple, it's easy to use, and there could be more applications, a whole lot more applications than what I'm showing you now. This is just based on my experience, and you could use this technique. You could even work on it and add stuff to it, and basically knock yourself out. Do whatever you want to do, yeah, and add more intricacies to the designs as well. All right, and that about wraps it up for the tutorial. Just to go over everything again, you have a base, and then you have a mesh that you use and tessellate or tile around this base, and then you select the tile first, and then you now select the base, hit N, go to edit, and then you go tessellate. And then these are the options. You use the fill mode is patch, then you set the rotation to active UVs that will use the direction of the UV islands to map the tiles around the mesh. And then the component coordinate will be local, and then the X and the Y axis will be set to cyclic, which will the cyclic, how I can explain it is that, you know, at the boundaries of the mesh, it sort of cuts it off. If you use extend, I've been using cyclic. If you use extend, it sort of, oops, that's too thick. I think I played with the settings a bit. Okay, so point 0.3. So extend sort of goes beyond, you know, this is where the mesh stops, this is the boundary, and then it goes beyond. That's how I'll put it. And also it sort of packs everything in there, and I guess it could be useful depending on what you want, but for my situation, I prefer to use the cyclic. So if I change this to cyclic and I hit OK, you know, it just cuts it off, you know, so wherever the mesh ends, that's where it ends as well. And you see it over here too, it just repeats, you know. All right, so that's it. You select the tile, select the base, you go to tessellate, the fill mode is patch, the rotation is active UVs, then the component coordinates local, and X and Y will be cyclic. The thickness, you want to set it to proportional, and then you can play with the scale. Then you click on merge, smooth shading, and if you want it on some faces and not on others, you use the unselected faces option. Now there are other options I've not touched. I guess those could work in certain situations, but for what I am doing, these are the parameters that work for me. And then lastly, you can use modifiers. So if there are modifiers on the meshes and you don't want to apply them, but you want them to be like you want the add-on to sort of take them into sort of consideration and, you know, work on them, then you can click on use modifiers. But since the meshes I have, you know, they don't have any modifiers, so that option is grayed out. But if you have modifiers and you want them to be part of the tessellation, then you click on use modifiers on the base or on the component as is here, or the tile mesh. Yeah, and I went ahead and did some tessellations again. Okay, this is the one we got. I'll hide this. This is the one we got, and then I did some others with some other meshes. Okay, so you can see just plain simple designs, nothing to them. So you can obviously go beyond this, and what you just get the point, what's the capabilities of the tissue add-on, and you can add your own spice and flair to the whole thing. Yeah. Then these are the let me hide all these. These are the tile objects I used for the, okay, they're all here. Take them one by one. This was the one we used, and then this one for the second one here, and then this one. Okay, let me see, is that the third one? Yeah. And then this one for the third one. And then for this one, actually I used this It's just that this is a mirrored version. Yeah, this one wasn't mirrored. Then I mirrored it on the y-axis, and then I got this. So that about wraps up the tutorial. I hope it has been helpful. I hope you've uh, gotten something. And if you have any interesting results or whatever you have, I would love to see what you can, what we all do with this. And my could just send it to me. If you feel like it, if you feel like you could just send your, whatever stuff you've done with this add-on. I'd really love to see it. So once again, thank you to everyone watching. Thank you to the organizers, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.